Yellow and Red Mix by Digis27, Chapter 65. Naruto, the younger blonde, blinked as the former Hokage extended his hand. He took it uncertainly as he was hoisted to his feet. Time around them seemed to stop as Naruto gazed into his father's piercing blue eyes, so like his. Well, it seems like the failsafe I worked into the seal worked. Activating if you ever reach the eight-tail state. I had hoped to not to see that day come. The older blonde looked around, staring at the semi-formed QB, who stared back with narrowed eyes. I had hoped never to see you again, QB. The old fox huffed in annoyance, quite perplexed by the whole situation. Cheater! The young dame looked at the fox in intrigue, noting the collar around her neck and the strangeness of the situation and landscape. Naruto was still frozen in shock as the old Namikaze walked around the miniaturized battlefield, peering down at the tiny Toby, who was frozen in time from the way the mindscape worked. Obito, how far you have fallen! He sighed to himself wearily as he stood back up before turning to face his son with a warm smile. Hello, Naruto. I'm glad I was able to see you as the man you grew up to be. Maybe I should call it even because of that. Naruto was still in shock as he stared at the man, acting like it hadn't been 17 years since his own death. Dad. The man nodded warmly, allowing a kind smile to spread across his features as a tear rolled down Naruto's cheek. I'm at least glad you were told. I am more than expected the third to keep it from you. He was the type to keep these things suppressed as much as possible. Naruto was still shocked, but he managed to find his voice. He did. I found out by accident. The Tsuchikage saw me and forced Naruto to tell me and him. And Minato looked away, thinking about that for a moment, before he looked back with the smallest of frowns. I see. Well, I suppose he had his reasons, although I never would have wanted you to find out that way. Minato just nodded dumbly. Oh, what do you say to your father, who you haven't seen your entire life, only for him to come back from the dead? You bastard! Minato opened his eyes wider as he found his son's fist firmly planted into his stomach. That's for sealing the fucking nine tails into your own son! He quickly glanced over to where the large fox had narrowed her eyes. No offense. Kermit just shrugged as she chuckled at seeing the man who sealed her get punched by her jailer. Naruto quickly turned his gaze back to the man in front of him as he groaned out in confusion and anger. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be happy or sad or angry as hell. That village hated me. The only reason I'm still even here today was because I ran away. Then I finally find precious people like Teiya-chan, Gaara, and Furimoto. Minato looked away from his son, unable to meet him in the eye for a moment, before he looked back around with a small smile. Naruto, how old are you now? Naruto glanced back up at the man, wiping away the few tears that managed to stain his cheeks. 17 tomorrow. Minato's smile grew a little as he put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, and got glad when his son didn't flinch from the contact. I'm sorry, Naruto. I know it must have been hard, and I'm sad. The village was like that. I had hoped you would grow up a hero. That was the life I wanted for you, no matter what. If you had to find somewhere else to accomplish that, then I guess I can only be happy. I have no right to act like a father now, and you have no reason to accept my apologies. But know that I'm proud for you for what you have accomplished. Naruto sighed. He felt deflated all of a sudden. Yeah, empty. Even all the anger had drained out of him. Naruto, I still have the Nine Tails chakra inside of you because I believed you could contain it, harness it. He looked across at the mindscape at the cube wearing a collar as she stared down at the miniature Toby. I don't know how, but you seem to have done that. He smiled as he looked across at Naruto, a fatherly smile that he honestly felt no right to give him. I know you would have though, because you're my son. He shifted his other hand to rest on his son's other shoulder, gazing into his eyes softly. I couldn't have done it alone. I've Kurama with me my whole life. Without her, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Minato raised a single eyebrow as he looked at his son with humor. Kurama. Naruto nodded, wiping the last of the tears from his eyes. Kyubi, without her, I would be dead. Minato seemed a little surprised as he looked across at the fox. She simply shrugged her shoulders, waiting for the two to finish their momentum. You helped my son. The Kyubi nodded slowly. She didn't really understand the question. Of course, she helped her container. If he died, then she would have to. At least it started that way. She couldn't deny the infectious little knucklehead had gotten her seeing things rather differently. He's hard to say no to. Minato nodded curtly, not believing he was actually having a conversation with the creature he had sealed away in his son to protect the village. I know. And Naruto looked up to him in surprise while Minato smiled down at him softly. I watched from inside you. It's how I can knowingly say that I couldn't be more proud of you. Your mother would be too. He smirked in amusement. You recreated the Rasengan and Karaishin without anybody teaching you. You really are my son, you know. And Naruto finally managed to smile as he looked up at his father. I was supposed to come here if the seal was breaking, but that doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. He looked down at his hand, which was slowly fading away. My time is nearly up, and the chakra is almost gone. He reached forward and pulled his son into a tight embrace. I'll always be proud of you, Naruto. Remember that. With that, his entire body slowly began to fade away, and soon enough he was gone, and Naruto was standing alone until Kyuubi coughed. Are you okay? Naruto remained quiet for a moment before he looked up with a smirker. Yeah, come on, we need to kick that guy's ass. Toby had seen the Kyuubi pause for a moment, like he was thinking, only for it to suddenly grin menacingly. Its whole body shivered as he lowered its body towards the ground. He watched in fear and fascination as fur began to sprout over his body. It didn't take long, and shortly he was standing in front of the fully regenerated Kyuubi no Yoko in all her glory. She finally got to her feet properly as she closed her eyes in bliss, taking a deep breath of sea air before opening her red slitted eyes and staring right at Toby. You smell of Uchiha, and you wield the Sharingan. And she chuckled darkly as she brought her snout down so close. It was only inches away from Toby's body. He could feel each breath that washed over his form. For that, you have to die. Toby blinked for the first time in a very long time. He felt fear staring into the face of the most powerful being on the planet. On the planet would do that to you. His eyes widened in surprise as he jumped backwards, nearly avoiding the tail that would have swatted him all the way to Water Country. Unfortunately for him, there were eight others, and each began to its individual assaults in perfect coordination with the others. She didn't even have to move as she let her tails keep the Uchiha busy. She actually yawned at one point. She had at least hoped for a challenge like from the last Uchiha she faced in the flesh, but this one was nowhere near Madara's level. She stared at him again, only noticing in time as a single Sharingan eye began to spin hypnotically. Toby grinned, but quickly put all his concentration into subduing the massive chakra construct. His Sharingan eye blazed wildly as he tried to take over the great beast's mind. Watching as her red slitted eyes flashed between that and the fox Sharingan, he was surprised then when the great fox shook her head madly, growling in irritation as the control fell away, revealing a very angry Kyuubi. You're the one that controlled me that night! She growled lowly as she bared her teeth in a mix between a snarl and a grin. I had hoped you were still alive. Toby widened his eyes in shock as he tried to warp away, only to be struck hard as the Kyuubi smashed him down into the water with her tail. And she didn't stop there though. She reached her hand under the waters and grabbed the slippery Uchiha, bringing him back up so he could look directly into her enraged eyes. Would release native. Kyuubi grinned sadistically as she increased the pressure of her hand closely around Toby in a fist as she squeezed. The Uchiha wasn't able to do anything except squirm as she held him there, slowly squeezing the life out of him. He grimaced, thinking of all the things he had yet to do. He couldn't die yet. Kyuubi grinned one last time before she firmly clenched her fist shut. She would have preferred a more drawn out death for the man that had the audacity to control her, but being here in the form was taxing on both her and Naruto. She snorted in disgust at how easily the Uchiha was beaten before allowing his body to fall limply into the water below them. She sighed, breathing in the sweet air again before smiling sadly. A strange sight on such a massive fox. Her body glowed for a moment as it became a swirling vortex of chakra that compressed down into a vaguely humanoid shape. As it became more defined, blonde hair appeared before the rest of Naruto materialized, panting atop the water. Man, we gotta work on that. It's way too tiring. He felt a nod of approval from QB, and he chuckled to himself. She would do anything to have more moments of freedom like that. He stood up, his face becoming a mask of seriousness as he stared at the broken body of Toby floating in the water in front of him. Idly, he noticed that it had begun to rain again. Sometime between him letting QB take over and her finishing off Toby, he walked across the water, really starting to feel the fatigue of having that much chakra forced through his body as a conduit. He narrowed his eyes as he looked down at the crumpled Uchiha and nudging him with a foot. Why did Dad call him Obito? He ignored it and pushed the man onto his back, only to jump back in surprise as he leaped to his feet. Swinging for Naruto, the blonde dodged and stared at the man incredulously, wondering what it took to kill this guy. He noticed that both of his eyes were now closed, the right one bleeding slightly. I can't die yet. I will release Madara-sama's plans. The world must know peace. I will. He was caught off as he brought his hands up to his throat, feeling the three-pronged kunai had lodged there. He would have blinked in surprise if either of his eyes were still working, but all he could do was splutter and choke on his own blood before falling back into the water, and dead for good this time. Not to stare down at his body as the man's blood slowly spilled out into the sea, staining it red around his body. Shut up. Konoha gasped in surprise when she saw a tired and sopping wet Naruto stumbling into the tower, and she left Naruto's side for a moment to rush over and help him walk the rest of the way, and she carefully laid him down on another bed as Naruto looked up from his own to see the blonde weakly smile at the blue-haired woman. I got him, Konan-chan. After that, he had difficulty keeping his eyes open and allowed sleep to finally overcome his body, letting it wash him away into sweet unconsciousness. Konan smiled as she stared down at the sleeping boy, wiping the locks of hair from his eyes before pulling the blanket over his body. She stood up with some difficulty, clutching her side in pain as she carefully walked over to Naruto and sat herself down on the side of his bed. He had recovered well in the last 3 days. Without the chakra receivers, his body had begun to fill out again to more healthy standards. Tomorrow, Konoha had been hoping to try and get him to take his first steps in over 10 years. He had talked more as well, mostly about Naruto, of course, but Konoha didn't mind. The cold, empty person he had become was slowly begin to recede him. Every day, she got more glimpses of the man he had once been. The man that Yahiko had called his friend. He really did it. Konan just nodded. Naruto being alive was all the proof she needed. That the boy had done what he said he did, which he could not. Naruto smiled warmly as he rested his head back on the bed and stared up at the ceiling. Incredible. He truly is powerful. I only wish we had met on better terms. Konan smiled as well. It doesn't matter. He saved you from yourself. Gave you a second chance. She looked down to the now bandaged wound on her stomach. And gave us all a second chance. Naruto nodded with a smile, something that had been happening more and more ever since Naruto had come into their lives. So the Katsuki's finished. Maybe it's for the best. It was nothing like Yahiko wanted anyways. Konoha nodded again as Naruto sighed him, turning back to face Naruto as he propped himself up on his arms with little difficulty. I only wish I could do something about all the misery we caused. Konon's smile turned sad as she placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder, and she was a little shocked when he tried to maneuver himself around into a sitting position, and still propped up by his arms. Konon, help me for a moment. And she was uncertain about when she saw the determined look in Naruto's eyes that had been missing for too long. She just nodded firmly, and she hefted the still rather frail man onto his feet, using herself as a brace, even though it cost her twins. And then Naruto was unsteady on his feet like a baby learning to walk for the first time. But with a few small and careful steps, they covered the distance up to Naruto's bed. Naruto stared down at the other Uzumaki with a small smile, placing a hand across the blonde's chest. Thank you for everything, cousin. You will succeed where I failed. Both Gar and Taiyo were sitting in his office, both anxious at the revelation that Naruto had disappeared. At first, the Red had thought it was some kind of joke, or that he had flashed ahead to the training ground. However, she had begun to worry when he wasn't there. Fu said she hadn't seen him at all. That worry only increased when he remained absent for the entire day, not even coming home to sleep. And she wondered where he had gone and what was keeping him. And despite not knowing just how powerful he was, she feared the worst. They had thought it best to not inform Fu in case it was nothing, simply saying Naruto was away on a mission. Yet here they were, a whole day later, and there was no sign of the unpredictable blonde leading them both to the situation they were in. Seiya nervously paced the floor of the office while Gar went through the small stack of paperwork on his desk, masking his own worry behind professionalism and calm. How can you be so fucking normal? Naruto's gone, and when we have no idea where the hell he's fucking gone, and you just sit there doing godforsaken paperwork. Gar sighed as he paced down the mission report in his hand, looking up at Taiyo with weary but understanding eyes. Taiyo, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm the Kasekaye. The whole village doesn't grind to a halt because one shinobi goes missing, no matter how important. However, Naruto is my best friend, and that is why I trust in his abilities to get back to us safely. Taiyo glared at him, but he kept his own gaze, even in neutral, until she huffed in irritation, flopping down onto the couch Gar kept for visitors or when Matsuri came to talk with him while he worked. They were waiting for another 15 minutes in near silence. Only the occasional sound of Gara stamping on a document could be heard echoing through the small room. So, of course, when a slightly sleepy Naruto suddenly appeared in the middle of the room, neither of them really knew what to do. Naruto! He was suddenly tackled across the room by a red blur, strangely reminiscent of the first time he had reunited with her in this office. He smiled sheepishly up at Taiyo's rather flustered face, and he would rub the back of his head, but Taiyo's legs were doing an effective job of pinning his arms to his sides. She smiled back before punching him in the face hard. "You asshole! What the fuck's your problem flashing off like that?" Naruto groaned as he was unable to rub his cheek. Taiyo could really pack a punch when she wanted to, and he was feeling that now. "Sorry, Taiyo. I'll explain everything, I swear." Taiyo just nodded with a cuff. "You fucking better." 3 months later, Naruto happily jumped across the rooftops of Senegakure, the biggest grin of his life on his face as he literally cartwheeled through the air. He was more nervous than he had ever been in his life, yet at the same time strangely exhilarated. He had reason to be after all. He flipped through the air, grabbing onto a banister as he spanned through the couple's apartment, but threw in a hurried apology before racing on. He dashed through the streets, dodging and weaving between equally annoyed and surprised villagers and shinobi alike. He ignored them all to focus on his destination. As he skidded around another corner, he flipped over a surprised blonde and puppeteer who watched the ecstatic Uzumaki curiously as he rushed off down the street at speeds hard to follow with the eye alone. "I wonder what's got Naruto in such a rush." Tamara just smirked knowingly as she pulled her brother along. You'll find out later. It's about time, you moron." She followed him with her eyes until he was around the corner, returning to the message she was writing to a certain lazy pineapple. Taiyo was running through some advanced katas with Matsuri. Just because the girl had made to the tuning didn't mean that the two didn't enjoy training together anymore. Fu was also there, but more as an observer. She also wore her tuning vest with pride, even if she had modified it a bit to hug her more pronounced curves a bit more. Naruto had been so proud of her that day. She had never felt better in her life. Taiyo was about to continue the training session when Naruto dropped down from the sky in the midst of them creating a small crater on impact. He was another person who hadn't given up on training just because things had quieted down. In fact, with more time than ever, he had thrown himself into missions and in training like no tomorrow. His speed was unbelievable as well as unmatched. "Hey Taiyo, how about a spar?" The redhead raised an eyebrow in amusement. Naruto hadn't asked her for a spar in ages. Definitely not after defeating Tobi. That was insane. He would ever ever unleashed the full power of the QB on her, but still, he was damn powerful. Of course, Taya just smirked. Her own stubbornness getting in the way of rational thinking again. Sure, you're on, shithead. Naruto just grinned excitedly, making Taya wonder what had him so happy. He kept capitalizing on what she assumed was a moment of distraction. She pulled out her flute and intended on showing Naruto that despite how powerful he had become, she could still put him down with a single note. Of course, she could only look down in annoyance when she realized her flute was no longer in her hands. She growled as she turned around, seeing Naruto whistling instantly while twirling her flute in between his fingers. She growled while he smirked before he suddenly saluted and disappeared, only leaving behind a brief after image of his smirking face. Tia narrowed her eyes as she glanced around, looking for where the next attack would come from. Not that she would even be able to see it if Naruto went full out. She didn't take kindly to being taken fun of in a spar, which is why when she Naruto's grinning face disappeared around a corner into the streets, she immediately took chase. Fu and Matsuri were just left in shock at the very sudden fast turn of events. Toya chased the grinning blonde relentlessly through the streets of Suna, and if she had been in a less irritated state of mind, she might have realized that Naruto wasn't using his full speed to escape her. She paid that online and chased after him anyways. Her own smirk beginning to form as she found enjoyment in the chase. Naruto led her on a random and winding path through the village until he finally stopped on top of the Kasukage Tower, the tallest building in the village. When she finally caught up, she was surprised to find him just sitting on the edge of the roof, lazily swinging his legs back and forth over the side, and staring down at the simple flute in his hands. Toya landed next to him in a fighting stance with the bow staff out and at the ready. However, when she saw Naruto wasn't going to fight her, she frowned and sat down next to him. She watched him curiously for a bit as she played with the simple metal rod, spinning it in his hand as he caught the light of the sun that was just now beginning to set. You remember when I bought this for you? Toya raised an eyebrow at his slightly subdued and quiet tone, far from the normal way that the exuberant blonde spoke. Yeah, it was about 9 years ago at that shop. Yeah, why? And Naruto just smiled softly as he held up the flute in the light, admiring it in all the years that you had it. She had never let it get damaged too much, and if it was, she would immediately fix it, bringing it back to as good as new. That was the first time I ever saw you cry. So he huffed, not explicitly admitting that he was telling the truth. So what? He turned to her and chuckled as he passed her the flute. She accepted it, but maintained her curiosity and slightly weirded outlook as she watched Naruto. I think that was the first real time you ever let me in emotionally. Toya just nodded uncertainly, not really sure where Naruto was going with all this. He seemed so out of character today. What about it? Naruto chuckled again as he placed an arm around the redhead's shoulder, pulling her in closer to him. Do you always have to be so hostile? Toya smirked as she allowed herself to be pulled in, resting her head on his shoulder so that her long hair drifted down both of their backs. I do when you act fucking weird like this, shithead. He just nodded with a warm smile as he rested his head on top of hers, letting them both look out at the horizon in comfort to watch the sunset. You still gonna keep calling me that then? Toya laughed, a soft tinkling sound that only made Naruto grin brighter. Are you gonna keep acting? Are you gonna keep asking? He just sighed happily as he continued to watch the sunset, setting the sky ablaze with various colors that made this time so special in Suna. He was sure there were other couples out there tonight watching the same sunset with their loved ones, except he didn't care because he got to be with the girl that he loved. No, I think I know better now. Toya just nodded her head, nodded her approval happily before snuggling into Naruto's shoulder, stealing his boundless warmth away. So what did you really get me all the way out here for, shithead? As much as I enjoy being with you, I'm not really exactly the mushy type who watches sunsets for fun. Naruto just grinned as he leaned back, pulling Toya with him until she was sat on his lap. Surprising the redhead. I know, don't worry, it's important. important. Taya looked at him with a smirk. So there's a thing now. Naruto just nodded with a grin, turned the redhead off a little as she suddenly became very curious. All right, I'll bite. What is it? Naruto's grin settled down for a moment as he instead took to just looking at Taya's looking at Taya lovingly. He said it was angled in such a way that the setting sun framed his hair, almost setting it on fire in the evening light. Marry me. And Taya just blinked in surprise for a moment as she stared at her boyfriend incredulously. What? Naruto just leaned in a little closer, their faces now only a few inches apart. Marry me. Taya just gulped as she processed what he was saying. But there are things, and then but we have to, and then there's Not quickly cut off her rambling with a kiss, sealing them together at the lips as Taya just let herself go. Melted into the contact as she closed her eyes. And when the two finally parted, Taya was still leaning towards him with her eyes closed, a smile now on her face. Okay. It was Naruto's turn to pause in surprise as he looked at Taya in wonder. It only lasted for a moment before an enormous grin split his face as he dived onto Taya, kissing her again and again to show her his gratitude. Taya was more than happy to accept them as she giggled every time a kiss would just miss her lips. That reaffirmed in her mind she would marry Naruto. No, she wanted to marry Naruto. He was the first person she had let into her heart, and she wanted him to be the last to ever leave it. Suddenly she pulled away, leaving a surprise and pounded Naruto. Hey, aren't you supposed to get me a ring or something? She said while trying to maintain a straight face, but she couldn't help the slight grin that spread across her face. Oh right, Taya might have chuckled at the scene if she wasn't so captivated. Naruto quickly began to fumble around in his pockets before finally withdrawing a small, simple velvet box. He offered it over to Taya, who took it hesitantly, almost reverently before opening it. She couldn't help the gasp that escaped her lips as she stared down with the wonder at the ring carefully laid inside the box. It was patterned in a way that made it look like three different bands of brilliant white gold that wove hypnotically around one another in a perfect circle. On the top, in between the three of the weaves, were three simple but beautiful cut diamonds that sparkled dazzlingly in the setting sunlight. Taya just gawked at the beautiful ring, too startled to say anything. Is it okay? Do you like it? And she managed to look up long enough to see Naruto staring across at her nervously, worried that she might not like it. The clerk said that if he even showed that ring to a woman, she would marry him. But Naruto had been skeptical how a simple piece of metal could do that. Taya simply gawked some more as Naruto's unease increased the longer the silence went on. How did you afford this? Naruto shrugged. This is still a little cautious in fear of Taya not liking the ring. I set aside all the pay I've been getting in the last 3 months. Taya blinked in surprise. That was over 40 A-ranked missions and more than a few S-ranked ones. Well, it was no wonder the ring was such a high quality. Its price must have been extortionate. I just went into the shop and asked what I could get for it. The man just seemed really surprised and told me there was only one ring I could buy for that amount. Sorry if it isn't enough. Taya was ignoring the blind at this point as she slipped the ring onto her finger with care. It fit her perfectly, and she wondered how Naruto had managed to get the size right. Not that she really cared. She looked up at him, seeing that he was still rambling nervously before tackling him to the floor. This time the one to plant kisses all over him. When she finally got up, she was grinning like crazy, almost at Naruto's level, which is rather scary. Although Naruto didn't mind in the slightest. So you like it? So he just laughed out loud before settling for a soft and gentle smile. Yeah, I like it. Naruto beamed happily as he picked up Taya in his arms, so surprising the redhead Kunoichi again. Great, let's go tell Gaara. Taya just nodded with a devilish smile. She couldn't wait for Matsuri to see her ring. The girl was going to be so jealous. End of chapter 65.